When Carlo recovered, the bishop arranged for him to live in a small monastery attached to the cathedral over which the bishop presided. Carlo lived and tutored with the monks. He even became an altar boy for his new protector. The bishop suggested Carlo enter public school, but Carlo refused. He could not have been more happy with his new home. He now truly lived in the house of God. Every night Carlo prayed for his mother. God saved me for a reason, he thought. What is the reason? When Carlo turned 16, he was obliged by Italian law to serve 2 years of reserve military training. The bishop told Carlo that if he entered seminary he would be exempt from this duty. Carlo told the priest that he planned to enter seminary but that first he needed to understand evil. The bishop did not understand. Carlo told him that if he was going to spend his life in the church fighting evil, first he had to understand it. He could not think of any better place to understand evil than in the army. The army used guns and bombs. A bomb killed my blessed mother. The bishop tried to dissuade him, but Carlo's mind was made up. Be careful, my son, the bishop had said. And remember the church awaits you when you return. Carlo's 2 years of military service had been dreadful. Carlo's youth had been one of silence and reflection. But in the army there was no quiet for reflection. Endless noise. Huge machines everywhere. Not a moment of peace. Although the soldiers went to Mass once a week at the barracks, Carlo did not sense God's presence in any of his fellow soldiers. Their minds were too filled with chaos to see God. Carlo hated his new life and wanted to go home. But he was determined to stick it out. He had yet to understand evil. He refused to fire a gun, so the military taught him how to fly a medical helicopter. Carlo hated the noise and the smell, but at least it let him fly up in the sky and be closer to his mother in heaven. When he was informed his pilot's training included learning how to parachute, Carlo was terrified. Still, he had no choice. God will protect me, he told himself. Carlo's first parachute jump was the most exhilarating physical experience of his life. It was like flying with God. Carlo could not get enough. The silence. The floating. Seeing his mother's face in the billowing white clouds as he soared to earth. God has plans for you, Carlo. When he returned from the military, Carlo entered the seminary. That had been 23 years ago. Now, as Camerlegno Carlo Ventresca descended the royal staircase, he tried to comprehend the chain of events that had delivered him to this extraordinary crossroads. Abandon all fear, he told himself, and give this night over to God. He could see the great bronze door of the Sistine Chapel now, dutifully protected by 4 Swiss guards. The guards unbolted the door and pulled it open. Inside, every head turned. The Camerlegno gazed out at the black robes and red sashes before him. He understood what God's plans for him were. The fate of the church had been placed in his hands. The Camerlegno crossed himself and stepped over the threshold. 48. BBC journalist Gunther Glick sat sweating in the BBC network van parked on the eastern edge of St. Peter's Square and cursed his assignment editor. Although Glick's first monthly review had come back filled with superlatives resourceful, sharp, dependable, here he was in Vatican City on Pope watch. He reminded himself that reporting for the BBC carried a hell of a lot more credibility than fabricating fodder for the British Tatler, but still, this was not his idea of reporting. Glick's assignment was simple. Insultingly simple. He was to sit here waiting for a bunch of old farts to elect their next chief old fart, then he was to step outside and record a 15-second live spot with the Vatican as a backdrop. Brilliant. Glick couldn't believe the BBC still sent reporters into the field to cover this schlock. You don't see the American networks here tonight. Hell no. That was because the big boys did it right. They watched CNN, synopsized it, and then filmed their live report in front of a blue screen, superimposing stock video for a realistic backdrop. MSNBC even used in-studio wind and rain machines to give that on-the-scene authenticity.